6:45, time for the papers this morning with our senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and former government advisor Claire Pearsall. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
All right, Nigel, let's kick off with the Times and this extremism thing that was launched yesterday.
Yes.
I don't quite know how to describe it.
No, the thing is about right, actually.
It is, isn't it?
I mean, it's caused a lot of controversy, and I'm not surprised. A lot of it was actually rather weird. It's quite good. The new definition is a bit more precise than the old one. The old one came from, had been used by Prevent since 2011, and bits were a bit vague. It was things like not undermining British values, and obviously there's a question mark of what are British values.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not against them, but each has.
But then you've got to define them.
Each of us have a different sort of view of that. So it's a lot better there. But what Michael Gove was doing was trying to say, right, certain groups are extreme, we'll define them. It's a subjective thing rather than objective. And once we've defined them, they won't have any contact with government or get any government funding, which sounds great. Then he names a few of them. So one of them was Patriotic Alternative, a neo-Nazi group. Another was the British Socialist Movement, British National Socialist Movement. They're sort of white supremacists. Well, I assume that they're not getting any government funding or have any contact with government at all. So it just seems a bit peculiar for him to name groups like that because it doesn't seem to fit the criteria that he was laying down.
Claire?
I think there's also the worry that there is no transparency on the decision-making process being used. So none of us know exactly why some organisations are deemed to be such a risk. I think we can all hazard a guess with some of them, but you do worry that others will then get added on. You don't know why, you don't know what the risk factor is, and there is no real means of appeal. So if you were an organisation, say if you were an environmental organisation who were deemed to fall foul of Michael Gove's scheme, there isn't any sort of way of appealing that. The only way you could do it is the judicial review system, which is incredibly expensive and very long. So I think the detail of it is a little vague. It was announced in a very polite manner, as Michael Gove always does, but using parliamentary privilege to do it without any details just... It all feels a little bit like they don't quite know what it is they want to put out
and you wonder whether he just named those organisations that he felt safe in naming.
Yeah,
and the real detail comes later and will be more controversial.
We are waiting for that. We're waiting for the entire list. I mean, he was able to name them. I mean, it would have been libellous had he named them outside the House of Commons. So he used parliamentary privilege to name them. The Muslim organisations he named all say they will go to court to challenge what he's saying, and there will be a much bigger list coming up in the future. But so we'll see who's on that. But
Andrew, he's got sort of cross-party benefits from this. Well, because Lord Wolney, John Woodcock, was the key advisor on this, and he obviously, I think he's independent now, isn't he? Cross-bench, but he was a Labour member.
He was a Labour MP, yeah. I mean, yes, he's had plenty of advice going in there, and obviously the criticism is some people say it doesn't go far enough, some people say it goes too far. I think we probably have to wait and see exactly how this works out.
But will he use parliamentary privilege to announce the rest of the list?
Well,
because otherwise he'll lay himself open again to more...
If they're able to prove that they weren't extremists and they've been branded extremists, that's absolutely right. So it may well be that by that time they will actually have the facts laid out about why these people are extremists, which, should it get into a court, they can uphold.
Yeah.
Again, it just makes the lawyers rich, as far as we'll just see streams of court cases, won't we?
Yeah. Claire, on the front of the Telegraph this morning, whistleblowers raising concerns about the NHS and its strategy.
Yes, now this is the NHS in its net zero drive, including, and pardon the pun here, for ambulances. So the drive to have an electric ambulance out there. Now you can look at this and say in inner city areas, electric vehicles probably quite sensible. If you live in a rural area with no charging facilities, I would be concerned that said ambulance wouldn't make it either to you or to the hospital or break down somewhere along a dark country road. And the NHS is investing an awful lot of money into looking into the green agenda, when it realistically should be looking at how it's going to reduce the waiting lists and make hospitals more efficient and treat patients. There is a process, a 135-question process, to ensure that any decisions or services that they maintain or take on are within the green agenda.
Well, look, I mean, it's sensible for some things. If you can be green without compromising anything, then great. But when it comes to ambulances and the like...
But this is also...
It's got to be bottom of the list, hasn't it?
I would have thought so.
Green ambulance.
I would have thought so. And because it's the NHS, it's now come with a team of individuals who will take on this job with a combined salary bill of £3 million a year.
Yeah, you're joking.
That's the problem, isn't it?
And that's the issue.
Somebody is in charge of this. There are departments within hospitals or trusts who are in charge of this.
All this sort of relies on whether you actually think it's right that we should be going green as a society. If that's the direction of travel we should be going in. I mean, the NHS is the UK's largest employer with 1.7 million people there. And the idea that an organisation like that should find different ways of being more environmentally friendly seems like a good idea. On the ambulances front, well, I mean, I'm assuming they're not going to send ambulances out to go and run out of electricity somewhere in some rural area.
But you don't know that. And yes, it's sensible to have a look at
assuming that, really.
your green credentials, but I don't think it demands a whole separate department to be set up costing millions of pounds when procurement in the NHS is falling anyway. Yes, it's a huge organisation. There are enough people in it to be able to take that on as part of their job. Procurement is an enormous department. It doesn't do a particularly great job, but surely there are people there that could look into the green agenda without being part of another team, which is £3 million.
Yeah, it's a separate green department.
Yeah, well, I go for that. I think that this is... I mean, a lot of companies are doing the same kind of thing. It goes back to, and I know this is controversial, but if we want to get to net zero by 2050, these are all the things you must do, and you must then manage it, and therefore you're going to need people to hire people to do just that.
Oh, I don't know.
No, you've already got the people there. That's
no one likes this.
No. Why? I mean, you're just employing more people to do a job that actually the existing departments who buy stuff...
But it's an extra job. It's an extra job.
It's an add-on to the job. You can't suggest that looking at the green alternatives to some bandages, plasters, medication requires another person on top of the person.
I don't know there are green alternatives to bandages.
Well, I don't know, because the green agenda covers absolutely everything.
But there would be for things like waste. I mean, if you're able to actually save water, for instance, save energy, those are the kind of things that ordinary companies are doing. Now, that's got a benefit. That will actually save money, but you're going to need a team of people there to identify it.
But £3 million.
But you're saying that on one hand it's going to save money and that's a good thing, which I don't disagree with, but you're adding on another layer of people and another set of salaries, so it's going to negate any savings that you're potentially going to make. It's going to be swallowed up in the vast...
I tell you what, let's ask everybody
system.
watching at home, what would you rather they spend the £3 million on?
I think you might have lost that one, Nigel.
Well, thank you, Stephen.
I don't know.
Touchy.
I know. Well, I sort of do. I mean, I'm with Claire. I think the entire procurement departments, there'll be waste departments, there'll be everything else. Just build it into their agenda.
But it's a huge organisation, and although doctors and nurses are the priority
He's not giving up. No.
You do need managers.
Well, at least your arguments are very polite. We've only got a minute, Nigel. I just want to... Well, for both of you, the Mayor looking at Rishi Sunak ruling out a May 2nd election. Labour still calling for one. Yeah,
I mean, well, it's been a Labour sort of trope, really, to say that must have one on May the 2nd. If he doesn't have one, he's frightened of the electorate and so on.
Running away. Well, I think there's a validity to that, isn't there?
This was something that they were planning at the end of last year. They hoped the budget would work. They hoped planes are taken off to Rwanda. None of those things have happened. They're more than 20 points behind in the polls. To go to the country now would be wipe out for the Tories.
But on the other hand, is it going to get any better throughout the rest of the year? I think the longer you leave it, the worse this gets.
Oh, well, that's interesting from a Tory
Yeah, and that's how I see it. We've now got to that point where it is all going horribly wrong and you can't trust MPs to behave themselves week to week. So I think that if you drag this out to the end of the year or January 25, I think that we are going to be toast.
OK. Claire, Nigel, thank you very much indeed. Here's your weather.